Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Bloom, publisher of Roofing Contractor, Walls and Ceilings, and Building Enclosure. Art Eisner, the editor of Roofing Contractor, and Rick D'Amato, the editorial director of Roofing Contractor, and I are all honored to visit today with Trent Cotney, the CEO of Cotney Construction Law. Trent, as everybody now knows, has become the legal voice of the industry, especially since he has offices all over the country and a team of fascinating, awesome attorneys to assist you with anything you need. And it's always great to catch up with you, Trent. You're so gracious with your time, so thank you so much for visiting with us today. And Art, I'd like to bounce it over to you to start off.
Thanks, Jill, and thanks to everybody out there for joining us. So Trent, another week, another hurricane system hitting the Gulf states. What are you hearing from contractors in those affected areas that are still just getting over Hurricanes Laura and Sally?
Yeah, so Joe, Rick, Art, always a pleasure to be able to talk to you guys and to the listeners out there. And I can tell you, I have not gotten a lot of sleep the last couple of weeks. I'll be honest with you. And, I've got my soda here. I don't know if you say yeah, but the phone's been ringing off the hook, and there's a lot of different issues. It is what is really troublesome is all of these storms have hit within a certain geographic location. So even if you didn't get a direct hit from one of these storms, you're getting the aftermath of that, which is a lot of rain, a lot of flooding. The issues are similar to kind of what we talked about last week with shortages of labor, shortages of materials, and I can get into that a little bit more here. And then I think, the biggest issue that I've seen is just logistics. With the larger commercial projects, the service crews and maintenance crews are able to kind of get out there and do some of the things that need to be done. But when it comes to re-roofing, it is incredibly difficult to mobilize and to access the job sites. That's been a big problem, is job site access. So one of the things that we've been asked to do when we're looking over contracts for these types of areas is to account for that in their scope, additional mobilization cost, having to deal with that. One of the biggest problems, Art, is we've had roofing contractors that are already out on these job sites, and then you got another storm coming. So they got to take all the materials they've already roof-topped off, secure them, and then put them back on. And if you don't have something in your contract that addresses that kind of stuff, then the owner is looking at you to kind of hold the bag. So we've really had to get creative this year with how we look at things contractually, because unlike other years where you would get a hurricane going here and then you get a hurricane going there, they all seem to be hitting the same place. We've got a lot of good friends that are in the Texas, Louisiana, and the Panhandle area that have been hit. And I was a good friend of mine is in Pensacola, and I talked to him the other day. I was like, look, man, if you need to, we'll send some of our guys over on horseback from Tallahassee to get over to you. It's pretty difficult. We're talking millions of tons of debris and just garbage that's around, trying to get access to it. Not to mention navigating safety has been a big problem.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Trent, so are the access issues that you're hearing about mostly related to just physical storm damage and that's the problem with moving people and products, or is it more about also the COVID-19 restrictions and accessing job sites is getting harder now?
Yeah, so I think the issue is access because of debris and inability to obtain rental equipment and other things. And I alluded to supply chain issues, but let me give you some hard stats. Again, I've said this a million times. I don't trust the news anymore. I don't trust statistics I hear. I trust the people that are out there that I know. And what I've heard is, we talked about the derecho storm in Iowa. If you're in Cedar Rapids right now, you're looking at a 10 to 12 week delay to get shingles. Okay. If you are in the Gulf states, you're looking at about an 8-week lead time to get shingles in certain places. So one of the conversations that I've had with roofing contractors is it's very important to have great relationships with your suppliers. That now is the time to really make sure that you've got a good relationship with your supplier, because if you're one of those roofing contractors that, does a little bit over here, does a little bit over there, and you don't have any political pull and you can't get the stuff you need, then you're kind of left having to blue roof everything that you see. Now, I haven't heard as many problems with commercial. Okay, I think there's still a lot of commercial availability for the key products, the TPO, that kind of stuff that's needed to get it done. But renting the equipment, if you don't already have it, has been difficult. And the plywood, the fasteners, the shingles, starting to see some significant runs. That lumber, I had a very interesting conversation earlier with our Canadian crew, and we were talking about the lumber prices and lumber shortage. And we were talking to Sam, who's one of our lawyers in Montreal, and he said that they can't even submit bids. They call them submissions up there. And it's interesting. In Toronto, they call it tenders. In Montreal, they call it submissions. We call it bids. They can't even submit a submission because they can't get a manufacturer to confirm when they're going to get materials. So that lumber shortage is going to continue to be a big problem, and I would expect to see prices continue to raise as the demand increases.
Certainly not encouraging news for a lot of residential guys out there, or the ones that do depend on new construction, in that regard. Any advice for those guys hearing the sobering news you just laid out for us?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Contractually, you clearly you want to make sure you got a price acceleration provision in your contract that allows you to escalate prices if need be. And you also want to manage your customers' expectations and account for delays in being able to complete work. Okay, what most of the residential guys that are doing in the Panhandle right now and in Texas and the Gulf states is tarping and saying we'll get to you. It's coming. This is very similar to what I saw in Panama City when the hurricane hit. Is a slew of roofing contractors came out. They blue roofed everything. They put them in line, but it was months before you started seeing new roofs get put down. So I think you're going to see something very similar. The other thing I said is you want to form strategic relationships with contractors outside of your general vicinity. If you do that, along with having those good supply relationships, that will allow you to not only obtain labor and equipment, but it might allow you to leverage some additional supplies that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So, if I'm a roofing contractor in Wyoming right now, I probably have access to materials that a roofing contractor in Pensacola does not. And that's the kind of thing and that's a huge distance. Obviously, you don't want that kind of distance. But if you can create these good kind of relationships with other contractors that aren't direct competitors, not in your geographic area, you can leverage them in the event that there's storms like this where you need to be able to mobilize additional labor, equipment, or material.
Can I ask just one other thing? And this is on topic of storms, and it's related to insurance. There's always a little bit of drama, it seems like, with every hurricane that comes along with the insurance companies. What are you hearing out there as far as pay goes? Pricing, are you hearing any kind of disputes between contractors and insurers as it relates to pricing?
Mm-hmm. I have to a certain extent, and I'm friends with a lot of public adjusters and a lot of the restoration contractors that are engaged in this type of work. They have said that time-wise, it's taken longer to get claims processed, and I think a lot of it is about who you're dealing with, which insurance carrier you're dealing with. But I think I've said it before, they don't have any concern about the courts moving rapidly against them. So there's a lot of feet dragging. And I think that you are starting to see a significant pushback from the insurance industry as a whole in construction related to storm claims. Okay, not just hail claims, but hurricane claims. Okay, you're starting to see a big pushback because it's having a big effect on their bottom line. If you think about it, in a lot of areas that where we have offices, the roof has almost become sort of a commodity where it's going to get replaced every year because there's going to be a hailstorm or a hurricane. So every 10 years, you're looking at getting a new roof rather than 20 or 30. And when you have that sort of mentality, it leads to a lot of different issues. And I think ultimately what I would expect to see is continued delays from the insurance industry and a continued push through regulation and through other means to try to narrow the focus of what claims are covered and what are not covered. There are constant battles in the courts over what the definition of is. We've been involved in a few, and they use the courts as a weapon to help interpret policies. One of the things that I want our listeners to understand is insurance is no different than a contractual relationship. Okay, your policy is a contract, and whatever is in that contract has to be interpreted. There's no, there are some statutes and rules that kind of govern things, but ultimately it's an agreement between you and the insurance company. So, what they cover and what they don't cover is often a source of contention. And, it's interesting you mentioned that, Rick, because recently there has been a ton of business interruption claims as a result of COVID-19, okay? I would say almost universally, the insurance companies have won that battle. Okay, there's one exception that's out there that I think is worth noting. It's a Missouri case. It was against Cincinnati Insurance, where they actually said the whole issue revolves around whether or not there are direct damages as a result of COVID-19. That's how insurance companies have been able to avoid business interruption. Okay, this case out in Missouri actually said, look, we think there is, and we're ruling in favor of the insured on this point. That, I'm sure will be appealed into infinity. So, I don't know whether or not that will continue to be good law, but that's a long-winded answer to your question. But the answer is I would expect to see a lot of pushback. I would expect to see continued delays, even more so than usual, because of mounting losses as a result of COVID-19.
Thanks, Trent. Art?
Well, thanks, Rick. Well, you mentioned the courts, Trent. I know we typically try to stay away from partisan politics, but I do want to at least dip a toe into the discussion about the vacancy on the Supreme Court. Not that it might be on the top of contractors' minds right now, but can you kind of break down what's going to happen with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat is so important to businessmen and women, going forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Art. And I think this is something that the listener should really pay attention to because the Supreme Court over the years has made some significant laws through its rulings. Okay, think about just recently the decisions that with DACA and with including gender orientation with the definition of sex under Title VII. All of those affect roofing contractors. Okay, it's not a contract, right? But it is something that affects your HR policies. It affects your premiums, and it maybe not directly, but indirectly. Okay, so what's interesting about the U.S. Supreme Court is that I would say since the 80s in particular, it has become more and more politicized. And it's interesting. I was having a debate with another one of our lawyers here, and there's a general rule of thumb that if you're a jurist, if you're a judge, you're supposed to stay above politics, right? And that's very difficult to do because we all have political leanings, and I get that. But the Supreme Court has become almost as politicized as Congress and the executive branch. And the reason why this pick is so important is that it really turns the tide to a more conservative leaning than a liberal leaning. Okay, and depending on which side of the chart you're on, then that could be good or bad. Right now, the breakdown is 5-3. Okay, 5 that are considered conservative, 3 that are considered more liberal. They've got to appoint one to replace, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So the way that it works is the president puts forth the nominations, and then the Senate approves. Goes through a confirmation process, and then ultimately approves. Right? 2 jurists have come down as finalists, and I want to mention this briefly because it's going to play a big effect into the roofing industry. Okay, one is Amy Barrett, smart judge, had a lot of really good decisions, but very, very conservative. Okay, very outspoken conservative on a lot of the viewpoints and a lot of the decisions that have been made. Often in dissenting opinions, supported a lot of Trump's positions. The other one, which I think is really the front runner, is Barbara Lagoa. And she's a judge originally from Florida. She was down in the 3rd District down in Miami, then moved up to the Florida Supreme Court and is now on the 11th Circuit. We've actually got some stuff or had some stuff in front of her. Cuban descent, I think politically, Trump will probably head that direction because I think She got the 11th Circuit position with a landslide. I see that as being a smarter political choice. I don't know ultimately which way they will go, but I do know that Trump will be down in Miami sometime this week and will be touting that. So it'll be very interesting to see those two. I think are the front runners right now, and I would absolutely anticipate that there is a big push to try to get it done this year. I really think that nothing's going to slow the Republicans down to try to get this through, because there's a lot of big things. There's Obamacare, there's continued immigration reform, DACA, any of those types of things that deal with regulations are within the kind of things that the Supreme Court normally hears. And here's something a lot of people don't know, okay? The Supreme Court only hears 1% of the appeals that are presented to it, okay? So, and it is very, very difficult to get the Supreme Court to even hear your case. Okay, we face this all the time when we're appealing cases. I'm barred with the 11th Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, and I can tell you, when you submit a case, normally what happens is they do what's known as a PCA, which is basically they just rubber stamp it. It's per curiam affirmed, and they send it back to wherever it went to. You know, that's it. You don't ever get the chance to argue it. You don't ever get the chance to see a decision. So actually getting the Supreme Court to hear your case is very, very rare. So everything they are hearing is absolutely critical, and more than likely, I would say most of it will affect our industry in one way or another.
Yeah, Trent, thanks for that breakdown and kind of handicapping the names in the running. I was just going to ask, what do you expect to be, if they're able to make the appointment through the process you suggested, what do you see as the biggest issue they could tackle even yet this year that could affect our industry? Is it that healthcare battle?
Yeah, absolutely. Obamacare is the biggest one. And they will, I believe the Supreme Court will wait until someone fills that seat. They have the ability to sort of punt it until that seat is filled. I believe they will wait to do that. So a lot of politics, okay? And, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, in a lot of ways, this is a political gift to Trump. And the reason I say that is because everybody is so focused on this, they're not as focused on some of the other things that are out there. And it's something that, regardless of which way you think, there's going to be a lot of attention put on this decision and a lot of attention taken away from other things that may benefit Trump. So.
Well, you alluded to this a little earlier, and certainly any new appointee to the court will likely hear some litigation on related to COVID-19. I recently saw that Ohio has passed a law shielding contractors as essential workers from COVID-19 liability. How similar is that law to what we talked about happening in Virginia, and are we going to continue to see more of this?
So, Ohio, I believe they passed that September 14th. It was a week or so ago. And Governor DeWine passed that, very similar to some of the other bills that I've seen put forth and passed. What's interesting about the Ohio version is obviously they say, look, you're not going to be liable if it's unintentional, right? But they carve out that reckless, willful, wanton, all that legalese type language when you intentionally, expose someone to COVID. They also carve out, if it's safety enforcement for OSHA, workers' comp, that kind of thing. But here's the very interesting thing about that Ohio one, is they prevent class actions based on it, okay? And a lot of this is designed to go right after the plaintiff's bar. Okay, very powerful lobbying group. That is very interesting because that's where the big money is. You get a class action lawsuit against a big business, then that's where, the plaintiff's lawyers want to go. So very interesting there, but I would say overall very similar. I would anticipate that the majority of the states are going to pass it. I think I mentioned before, California said no. That may change. There are other, really strong consumer-friendly states that may cut against it. But I would anticipate that you're going to see that. Actually, interesting here in Florida, we were talking with the executive branch earlier, our lobbyist group, and it looks like there may be a special session held in November to put some of this forth. Okay, normally this wouldn't happen until session happened next year, but they're considering doing a special session sometime in November to address Florida's legal liability shield along with some other things.
Okay, more to come on that. What else is on your mind this week, Trent?
You know, it's interesting, Art. It's if that wasn't enough, both California and the Department of Labor have come out just this week. The DOL came out with new guidance on classification of independent contractors. Okay, and it's real interesting. They said they kind of softened it. I don't know if that's really the case. They went from normally what the Department of Labor looks at when they are classifying independent contractors. And why this is important is subcontractors, right? So listeners out there, you might be using subcontractors. And one of the things that the Department of Labor looks at is they want to see whether or not they are truly independent. Okay, does the prime contractor control the means and methods of their work? Do they tell them what to do? Does the subcontractor advertise? And the test is known as the economic realities test. Well, this recent guidance, and we're actually going to get you guys an article on it, it kind of goes in a little bit more detail because it's pretty complex, is they've scaled it back to 5 factors, and really they're just focusing on 2. And that is the degree of control that the prime entity has over the sub-entity, and whether or not the sub's profit and loss is independent of whatever the prime does. Okay, so still an issue there. With California, they've got the ABC test, and they have it's very similar, and they've just kind of expanded it a little bit. So we'll go over in a little bit more detail there, but one of the big issues in roofing in particular is the use of subcontract labor. So anything that deals with this topic is something that everybody in the industry needs to pay attention to, regardless of whether it's roofing, HVAC, walls, ceilings, whatever it might be. It's something that affects all of construction.
All right, thank you, Trent. Jill, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Thank you, Art and Rick, very much. Well, I want to let everybody know that, we've just announced that that we're canceling Best of Success in December down in Dallas. But instead, what we're doing is we're launching what's called the Best of Success. And what we did is we poured over 15 years of all the surveys we've gotten from all of our attendees, and we picked out 5 of the top sessions that over the years people just love the best for multiple different reasons. And Trent, congratulations, you were one of those top speakers. Yay! And we're really excited that you're going to be hosting one. So what we're doing is we're hosting 5 webinars. We're doing one a week. And Trent, you're going to be speaking on December 15th, right? Tuesday. Yep. And thank you so much for doing that. We're going to do one hour webinar a week for all the contractors out there to put some great education and kind of link back to some of the great content that you've talked about over the years. In addition to that 1 hour we're going to be able to spend with you. But first of all, thank you so much for hosting one of the webinars, and congratulations on being one of our speakers.
Hey, thank you so much. And for everybody listening to this, if you haven't been to Best of Success before, now is the easiest time to do it. Okay, it is by far the best event in the year to help you understand not just the issues that are out there, but also to understand the business aspects of how to run your construction business. So it's been fantastic for me. I know I've been to about 10 or so of the 15. So really looking forward to it. Very honored to be among that list, and I'm excited for December 15th.
Yes, Trent, thank you very much. And to everybody watching, you'll see the list of all the speakers that we're going to be featuring one a week starting November 17th. And thank you everybody for watching. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to us at roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. And while you're there, click on the subscribe button and make sure you sign up for our free digital editions and our free e-newsletter so you can always stay up to date on when we're doing some great interviews with Trent and other people in the industry. So again, everyone stay safe and healthy. Have a great week, and we look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks again, Trent.
Thank you.